What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with James of Ocean's 8 Alaska. Great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. It's awesome to have you here. First off, the brand new album, which is Disparity, coming out very, very soon. Being that this is sort of like your comeback record with the band, did this almost feel like picking up? Did it almost feel like the band was picking up after Hikari, or was this more or less for you picking up after Lost Styles in a way?
I think this record is kind of different in many ways. That kind of conceptually, it's kind of split down the middle. Whereas kind of Lost Styles and Ikari, you've got very strong themes running out through the entire albums. Disparity kind of levels on this kind of lo-fi soundscapes mixed with this really kind of heavy deathcore, like noxious vibe on the other side. And I think for me, it was essentially kind of obviously naturally kind of picking up from where I left off with Lost Styles as well, but kind of as the band instrumentally as a whole, it was really for them guys kind of like honing that kind of stylization of kind of, you know, the crazy tunings and time signatures, yet still kind of making a relatable and kind of homing that all in and kind of refining it.
hmm Was that kind of like a preconceived idea to make it sort of sound in that way, or was it like very improvised and like there was a lot of experimentation involved?
Yeah, so like always, kind of with any Oceans record, there's always kind of a lot of experimental process within the kind of the first iterations of the album, and for us, it was kind of just like, how can we go from kind of one element and just kind of flip that on its head and go straight to kind of the other element, and really kind of these kind of like almost relaxing kind of lo-fi beats just kind of went hand in hand with this kind of really kind of obscenely heavy side. So I think kind of from the get-go, instrumentally, definitely that was kind of where the album was gonna head. And then because we are, you know, quite musically inclined in that way, the vocals kind of um, almost come as kind of a precursor to the music. So for me, it's always been the case kind of with Oceans. It's quite hard for me to kind of take that music and then kind of wrap it up in terms of kind of a lyrical edition of how this album's going to fit and sound. So I had real fun with that and kind of tackling that challenge and kind of obviously returning to Oceans for this new record.
hmm Yeah, and it goes without saying that the first three singles that we got, Nova, Metamorph, and New Dawn, that's not representative of the whole album. There's a lot more to be discovered, and that's just the first little taste of it, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, with most releases and stuff, most bands, I guess you could say, kind of tend to play it safe. There's definitely elements of kind of um, label preferences and things like that in comparison to our songs and things like that. And that's just a natural way of kind of the music industry. So yeah, I would definitely would say there's a lot more to explore in Disparity. In terms of soundscapes and technicality and going from this kind of softer to heavier vibe.
hmm And it's funny you mentioned that too, because I feel like there's a lot to celebrate with the Oceans Camp because last year was the 10-year anniversary that really anybody heard Oceans 8 Alaska with the Taming Lions EP, but then this year is also the Into the Deep EP. How would you say like your evolution in Oceans 8 Alaska and you as a vocalist sort of like changed over time before you put out the debut of Lost Isles?
Yeah. So in terms of like a personal level, I definitely kind of grew up as a fan of kind of the pop punk. So I was big into like Sum 41 and Blink and that. And for me, kind of just progressively as I kind of came into my late teens, like got heavier and heavier. Started kind of listening to like the As I Lay Dyings and Bring Me obviously back when there was deathcore and that kind of thing. And just kind of moving into that kind of spectrum of the alternative music scene. And for me, experimenting kind of with heavier vocals and things to start with, and then kind of then bringing in the cleans and things like that. And I think kind of as a whole, ultimately, I'm always obviously looking to kind of progress as like a vocalist and things like that. But for me, kind of with this record, I definitely kind of wanted to kind of experiment and get a bit out of my comfort zone on a few certain things. I've never really had kind of any form of kind of vocal producer or anything like that in the studio to kind of lean on and, you know, direct questions to, even kind of from the get-go, from our first debut album or EP and things. So for me, it's still quite a guessing game, really, when it comes to vocals, in terms of how I go about particular things and recording them in the studio. And I think we're kind of getting to that point now where we've kind of got the budgets and the production value behind us to be able to, for me to then kind of go in the studio and just kind of try all these new things out vocally. So yeah, it's been, you know, a real fun kind of process getting back into it and kind of exploring that side of things.
And it's funny that you mentioned the evolution of vocals, because I was going to ask, in terms of your lyrical process, have you always needed to hear the music before you came up with the lyrics, or has there ever been a time where maybe like a concept or an idea can maybe help not only influence the lyrics, but also maybe influence the music as well, and like serve as like a bit of a direction to go into?
Yeah. So I'm always writing, like, be it kind of like, you know, little melodies, just straight up script lyrics, or even like humming out or tuning out kind of guitar rhythms or drum rhythms on my phone to like share with the guys and stuff. As I kind of touched on briefly, like with Oceans being such kind of a technical first band, a lot of like the musicality and things is what we kind of concentrate on first. It's to kind of get those odd tunings, get those kind of weird time signatures in, and kind of really stretch our capabilities in that sense. And then I kind of come in at the end and essentially kind of ravel that up with kind of lyrical content, essentially. That being said, for me, as I mentioned, I do find that sometimes quite hard, especially when, and very often in Ocean songs, you know, we've got songs that kind of go from one spectrum to the other within kind of 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's, you know, typical OAA style, love it or hate it. That's kind of what we love doing and things, you know, but if you've kind of got a lyrical theme going on in a song, sometimes it's quite hard to just kind of flip it on its head and match that kind of musical vibe that's going on. So I really do kind of have a challenge with that. That being said, kind of on top of Oceans, I do kind of have my other kind of musical ventures and things like that, and we work differently in that, where it's kind of more of a lyrical led way. So I just get to kind of enjoy the full breadth of kind of being a vocalist and creating music, really.
And it's funny you mentioned that too, because have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, and then they're always like one syllable over like every arrangement you have, and you have to
Oh yeah. A lot of the time, that's happened before. Yeah, sometimes as well. I guess if you're writing a song, it's kind of really precious to you from a lyrical standpoint of view. Sometimes it's really hard to kind of bite your tongue and be like, I don't want to cut that word, or I don't want to cut that phrase, because personally, on a level, like, it means a lot to me and I'd love to have it there. So there's a lot of like to and fro, you know, between the members and things like that. But we always kind of get there in the end. We really do kind of discuss every inch of a kind of a song or a record with kind of a magnifying glass and go through everything in kind of traditional OAA style. And I think that really kind of shows, like, when you listen to an OAA track, you can kind of listen to it numerous times and you'll hear something that you probably didn't hear on like the first or third listen. And that's something, as kind of musicians, we try and encapsulate as well within the OAA brand.
Mm-hmm. And being that you do have many different lyrical themes, but you also bring in different like different vocal styles, as you mentioned before. You know, you mentioned you're changing like everything every 30 seconds. Obviously, it's a different vocal technique, but is there anything that ties in different vocal techniques together? Is it a similar emotion that you're expressing in a clean sound versus an aggressive sound, or is it almost like two separate mind frames? Is it almost kind of just like a Jekyll and Hyde scenario?
Yeah, sometimes it's like I guess, yeah, you put it quite nice, like a Jekyll and Hyde scenario. Like, I think typical great example is kind of our latest single, Nova. You've got kind of the theme, you know, is essentially about like a supernova, a collapsing star, so to speak. But I've done a spin on it as though that the star is an actual person, and, you know, they're caving in and crumbling to kind of the pressures of the world. And that ultimately, like, I try and take the listener on a journey lyrically, if that's what they wish to kind of read through and into. So you've got like the intro to the song, which kind of sets the scene and everything like that. The breakdown of Nova is really that kind of turmoil period of like, you know, all this pressure is could cause them to kind of snap out and bite and, you know, hurt other people around them. And then kind of that outro is kind of that release of like kind of good energy and relief that they've kind of come out of the other side and or found that light down the end of the tunnel. So yeah, I try like lyrically and things to kind of look at that really deep. And when we do kind of change things up musically, to make sure that that kind of contrast is not only there with the musicality, but also the lyrics.
In order to get like that inspiration to write the vocals and write the lyrics, you almost have to like look for it, or do you have to like, you know, kind of seek the inspiration, or does it strike when you least expect it?
Some songs I'll, you know, we'll be writing, I'll just vibe with it straight off the bat, and it's just a real simple process. Look, for example, kind of like Metamorph, which was the lead single off the record, we pretty much writ that in like 24 hours. It was just like a complete vibe. Like we just hit the ground running with it, and it was just, you know, it felt so seamlessly easy. Where there's others where, you know, we've all got multiple different music tastes as a band. We don't just listen to metal. We listen to such a vast array of things. And I think hopefully that can be also kind of seen and heard within our music. We're trying to bring different elements in within different parts. And sometimes it just might not be kind of a vibe that I dig with, or one of the other members kind of gets. And that's then when we kind of sit down and really just work together to kind of figure things out as a band.
Hmm. And if you don't mind me asking, but you know, coming in after the band released Hikari, are you gonna feel like you have maybe a different attachment to that music, or maybe like express a different emotion or energy when you perform some of those songs live, as opposed to the stuff you've done off of this album in the first?
Yeah. I definitely, you know, Hikari is a great album. Upon kind of the initial concepts of Hikari, I was there still in the band through kind of the initial writing processes and things. So I still feel that kind of connection, as though, you know, no different to kind of Lost Styles or our forthcoming album Disparity, in that sense. I think in terms of performing them kind of as a band and stuff in like live situations and things like that, I definitely obviously want to be able to give fans and the crowd what they want in terms of that, because there's some bangers on the Hikari album that everyone loves. So for us, it's kind of looking at like, you know, how do we go about adjusting to that? I'm definitely more of kind of a baritone vocal style, whereas as Jake was more kind of soprano, but much higher, and it was alto, should I say? And it's definitely kind of finding that balance, you know, of like where we sit vocally and lyrically with all of that.
Hmm. And as you release more and more music, I'd imagine it gets harder to put a set list together when you're playing live anyway, right? I'd imagine you have the diehard fans kind of wanting you to play like the Puppeteer demo or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we do get it's quite a weird one with Oceans. We really do have some diehard fans that love a lot of our older stuff, and you know, we was very young as a band when we writ kind of our debut release with Tammy Lines and Clocks, and the debut EP Into the Deep. You know, we was span of the band was age 16 to 19. We were still like ultra young when we dropped them, and as musicians we've grown, and I think with that, Ocean sound has grown over the years as well. So we definitely love, you know, being able to play and fans enjoying, you know, a lot of our older songs as well. Kind of as a band moving forward in the live scenario, I think we definitely edge on playing more of the newer stuff. That's only as well from like a promotional standpoint of view as well, for kind of new releases and things like that. But it's just kind of a personal vibe standpoint as well. You know, we've grown and we've adapted since then, and we kind of hope that the music's also progressed in terms of technicality and kind of swagger. So we tend to go down that route more so than not.
Mhm. And it's funny you mentioned that too. Could though, like this is like the new question I've been asking artists, but like, do you think that when you put the music out there, it only represents a span of time of like who you were at that particular time, or do you think that the music could also evolve over time as you evolve as an artist?
Yeah, I think for me, looking at kind of oceans evolutions and things, I definitely think there's kind of what I would personally call like timeless songs from the band. Um, I think kind of Clocks being one of them was one of the singles that kind of propelled us into kind of the scene. But I'd also kind of say that about kind of a number of other songs from our catalogue as well. Um, for me, though, I do like to kind of round off releases and kind of encapsulate them within a period of time. So um, already now we're kind of looking forward to kind of what we're going to do next already. And that sounds crazy to people. Disparity's only releasing as of kind of this interview tomorrow. And yeah, it's definitely something that I kind of just like to round off and really then just be like, right, that's done. Now let's concentrate on the next task.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta ask about the genre debate because a lot of people have labeled Ocean's 8 Alaska as the metalcore style. I just want to know, what do you think metalcore is? Because every time I ask somebody what metalcore is, they say it's music that has singing and screaming in it. So meaning that they would probably call like Opeth a metalcore band. Like, so I'm just curious. So
Yeah.
like, what would you say metalcore is? Is it a genre you would say, or is it just a name of some sort? I feel like at this point it is almost kind of like a movement more so than it is a style.
You literally just took the word out of my mouth. I was literally just about to come back saying I think it's a movement more than anything. I think back in the early 2000s and stuff, kind of when I was getting into this kind of scene as well and everything, and exploring the heavier side of things. For me, it was more of a cultural movement. I remember kind of growing up in my hometown, Birmingham. There was essentially a graveyard in the center of the city that just all the alternative kids would go and hang out on weekends and evenings, and just it was such a vast array. You had kind of like everyone that was just into the alt scene, no matter what you was in, whether it was the new metal Linkin Park styles, whether it was like the ultra black metal type styles, whether it was kind of the alt pops, the Fall Out Boys, that kind of thing. They'd all just congregate and just have a great time and just enjoy kind of music. If there was ever a band playing in the city, everyone would go, and you'd pretty much know all the faces in the crowd just from this park in the center of town. And
In a
yeah, so
cemetery.
I kind of see it as a movement, really.
And in a cemetery, you just blew every CBGB stories I heard out of the water with that. So,
Yeah, like it's not a creepy cemetery because it's in the center of the city, but yeah, I mean, it is a cemetery, and yeah, we did used to sit on gravestones.
hey, hey, if I was buried in that cemetery, I would have been honored. I do got, and I also got to point this out though. I've always said metalcore was the UK's greatest export because where have the metalcore capitals been outside of the UK? Massachusetts and Australia. So I'm willing
Yeah,
to bet
yeah.
either India or South Africa is going to be the next big metalcore capital of the world.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like yeah, I'd definitely say the Aussies have got something in the water down there for sure. And yeah, we've got the likes of kind of following in kind of Bring Me's footsteps originally, and then Architects are just doing great things at the moment as well. While She Sleeps, there's so many others I could name literally off the back of a hat, and it's nice to be kind of incorporated in that scene, for sure. I think from a kind of an ocean standpoint, we definitely kind of have a bigger following over in the States and kind of mainland Europe than we do see kind of in our home country, which we find a little odd sometimes. But yeah, kind of.
It's not odd hearing that here though. I mean it could be whether it's Bring Me the Horizon, Architects, While She Sleeps, Loathe, Bullet for My Valentine, any if it's from the UK and they're in that sort of metalcore label, it's going to be a sold out show. People are just obsessed with that over here. But I heard that in
Yeah.
Europe, like the way we love
Yeah.
European bands, in Europe everybody's obsessed with American bands.
Yeah, it kind of flips, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But no, we get a ton of stuff at the moment. Like on YouTube from like people in kind of Indonesia, Jakarta, like jamming our records and stuff and like covering just like pop-up live shows like from what I can see. So yeah, I think you're starting to get the Japanese bands come into the scene now as well. So I think,
Cross
as you
state.
said, within the next few years, it'll be cool to kind of start seeing more bands from these areas, like you said, like South Africa, like the Indonesias of the world, even the South American continent popping up.
With Stepson rising in New Zealand, I mean, it's only making too much
Yeah,
sense now at this point. So I think
yeah.
I think we're onto something here. I think that's going to be like a revisionist historians need to like point that out.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm stoked for it, man.
Be a metalcore
In
band in the
my eyes,
pyramids of
like
Egypt.
it's only better for the kind of metal genre as kind of it expands across the globe.
Yep, definitely. I could just see a metalcore band starting in the pyramids of Egypt. Um,
Yeah.
yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is do you put a similar energy into your live presence when you're on stage as you do when you're in the vocal booth or in the studio in a way? Is there anything that kind of ties that art together, or do you feel that recording in the studio and playing live are two completely separate entities?
Technique wise, for me, they're completely separate entities. So in the studio, it's definitely kind of a all you can give it type of thing. Because you're not, needing to kind of rely on your voice day in, day out on kind of a long tour, sometimes month plus, back to back dates. So for me, kind of live, I'm usually at a live performance, I'm kind of working at what I like personally say is kind of like a 70% level. Um, and that's essentially just to kind of obviously keep on top of my vocals. I've known, so many people, big bands and smaller, like kind of blow out their vocals and things like that from various things on tour. And thankfully, that's kind of never happened for me. I don't intend it to ever happen for me. I look after my voice as well as I can. I very rarely drink alcohol and things. Do a lot of warm ups and warm downs and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely different to being in the studio, for sure.
I'd imagine it also depends on the venue too, right? If you're like on a in like a DIY club where people could jump on the stage and crowd surf versus like playing at like a venue with a barricade and stricter security, it's almost like a completely different Ocean's 8 Alaska experience, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Personally, I love like the more intimate kind of style gigs where there's maybe not a barrier for the crowd and they can get up on stage. I've played so many amazing shows like that where we've just had great kind of crowd interaction and things. And in terms of that, yeah, there's a lot more to kind of think about in that sense because we've got such a wide sonic sound as a band. We've got all like the sample work and kind of all of these kind of different guitar sounds going on and things. And obviously Chris Turner, our drummer, his drums are quite a forefront of the band as well. We want to make sure that the audience is getting kind of the best sound they can. So sometimes that takes quite a lot of balancing in these smaller venues, and again that may mean that I'll need to push my vocals a bit harder so that it can push through on kind of a smaller PA or something, so to speak. And then again, it's completely different again when we're kind of playing a lot of the large European festivals as we did this past summer. We're playing 50, 60-foot stages to kind of thousands of people, and that's a completely different setup with kind of in-ear rigs and everything like that,
Yeah.
which you can obviously rely on to kind of hear yourself crystal clear in comparison to being in kind of a real tight-knit venue.
Yeah, there's plenty of I think there's equally amount of sweat, but it comes from different sources.
Yeah, for sure. And don't get me wrong, any stage, being a performer, I just love being on and playing with the guys and turning around and seeing the guys enjoying themselves as well, riffing out on the guitars or smashing a drumstick on on a cymbal or literally anything. And that's what kind of gets me up. It's not just the fans and looking at them and seeing them enjoying it. It's being part of like a collective group of people, and kind of even, you know, when we take out a wider crew like our sound guys and techs and things like that, and just seeing them enjoying themselves as well is just great.
Hell yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such a awesome chat. Is there just anything else with Ocean's 8 Alaska that you would like to promote for the release of Disparities in terms of tours, new music? Can you bring Oceans back to the States one day? We would love to have you here.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having me. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and things. Yeah, I think overall, obviously, as you guys will probably know or have heard of, Disparity is out on September 1st. It's an 11-track album. I think definitely give it a couple of listens. There's a lot of kind of incredible soundscapes that we've kind of worked on. And I think from kind of a metal perspective, some people can sometimes become quite disheartened. Oh, they've not got the riffs or they've not got the drumming going on. But when you actually listen to kind of all these soundscapes we've built and worked together, there's a lot of instrumentation, and there's, you know, a lot of kind of man hours that have gone into that also. And that's something we've kind of tried to explore on in this album. So it's wholeheartedly an OAA album. I think you'll realize that once you give it a listen. And I just want to say, yeah, to anyone listening, just thanks for the continued support. It really means a lot to me and the rest of the guys. And we are looking to join a tour in the States, hopefully soon. We just want to make sure that all of that's kind of in place. And, you know, coming out of the back end of a pandemic, there's a lot of things that have changed, and we just need to make sure that it's all financially viable and things. But you'll definitely hear from us soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Ocean's 8 Alaska, Disparities out September 1st. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.